Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. It's the start of January and I thought I'd give you a full tour of the garden and show you what the state the garden's in and how it's going to progress over the year and what my plans are for the year. So keep watching, I'll share some of that for you. So last year I planted some dwarf fruit trees and here they are. So these are the ones quite a few people have asked for updates on over the course of the year, and they're still here in these pots. They're still doing well. I mean, they're all dormant at the moment because it's winter. So there's my pear, there's my cherry, these are my two apples, and I've got a plum over here. So the plum was in this pot, if you remember me planted it, but something happened, I don't know how, but the plot got smashed to absolute bits and I've had to transfer the plum into this pot here. It's a plastic pot, and there's my plum tree. Again, it's doing absolutely fine. There's a broken twig there, I'll prune that off, but hopefully in the next year or so it'll start fruiting. The nectarine, or the peach, sorry, that's in the greenhouse. I like to keep it in the greenhouse over winter and especially early spring because it helps with that peach leaf curl to keep the rain off it. This area here, now this is one of the things that was on my list for last year. Is I want to do a small garden, a small container garden that's on concrete. I mean, this is the first house we've had that's had a garden, and before this we lived in a terraced house, and in our house we had and at the front of our house we had a few feet of concrete, and it wasn't much bigger than this sort of space. So what I want to do is replicate that garden and show you how much you can grow in a limited amount of space. I think that'll be helpful for quite a few people who are doing balcony gardens and who have limited access to space. So we'll do something like that here. I mean, it was on my list of stuff to do last year, but I was just so busy that I never got around to doing anything. So if you come down here, there's nothing that really needs doing up here, just a little bit of tidying. I mean, I tend to leave the plants to stay as they are over winter, and then early spring I'll cut them back and just give them a little spruce up with mulch, just so they can come back to life in a nice way. So I'm not going to touch any of that for a while, and then I'll tidy it up just as we get into the start of the season. Again, all these beds, they just need a general tidy up when we get around to doing it. And the garden's a muddy mess at the moment. It's slippy, it's wet, it's muggy everywhere. But let's have a look around and show you what the stuff that we've got in the garden. If you remember here, there was an old greenhouse that I finally managed to get taken down, and we took that down, and I just need to clear it out now. And there's a bathtub under there somewhere that I used to grow in, and that's going to be part of my container garden, and I'll convert that bathtub into a nice growing space, and I'll show you how to do that. My old chicken house is no longer in use anymore, so one of the big projects for last year was getting this chicken house transferred into a new area and give the chicken some nice new growing space. So this is the new chicken coop, and what we did was we transformed an old cupboard that someone was throwing away and turned it into a nice chicken coop that's quite luxury. It's quite solid, it looks quite good, and we've given them a massive amount of space as well, double the size of the space that they used to have. And we've roofed half of it and the rest of it's covered with wire, so they're getting plenty of protection. And what I want to do now is in here I want to get my compost sifter set up so I can sift off this compost in place and I'm not wheeling it about the garden. And once I get that set up, I'm pretty much there in terms of my new composting system, but I'll give you a separate video when I set that compost sifter up and how I set up the new compost system. I'm struggling to get hold of wood chips at the moment. The normal guy that I get the wood chips off hasn't dropped me any off for a while, so I'm struggling to get hold of wood chips. Go on, you get back in. Go on, shift. So last year was the first year of using this new greenhouse as well. What I want to do is I want to give this staging a bit of a painting and a bit of an oiling and make sure that it's going to last me a good few years to come yet. We made this sink and we made this potting up table, and this potting up table has been absolutely fantastic. It's brilliant. So many people have copied it and taken benefit from the use of this type of potting table. I've got a video up on YouTube, so if you do want to go and have a look at that, I'll leave a link for it up here. So there's the peach tree that I mentioned at the back, and that one's still doing really nice. Once the rain stops for spring, I'll take it outside and I'll leave it out there. But there's still some chili plants and still some things that I'm trying to overwinter. There's still a few things that I'm trying to overwinter in here. One of the things on my list of things to do today is to get loads and loads of onions sowed. So I'm going to sow all my onions for the next year today. I'm going to sow some more broad beans. I'm going to sow some lettuce and some spinach and chard and stuff as well. So there's loads of stuff you can sow in January. I've got a video on what you can sow in January as well. Go and have a look at that. As I transformed this bed, there was a hedge here, a privet hedge, that ran down that side. So I got rid of that hedge, and now we've got a nice growing space here. And now what we've got is at the back we've got a veg bed, and at the front we've got a flower bed. But the problem is the soil's on 2 levels, so what I need to do is fill this front side up quite a bit to get it a lot more level and a lot more nice. So if we go down this side, there's a nice bit of space here as well. At the moment it's just got stuff dumped here. There's logs, there's a compost heap under there somewhere. There's loads of branches and stuff just dumped, and I didn't get a chance to tidy it up last year, but one of my aims is to get all that tidied up this year, spread that compost, because there's a nice good patch of soil under here, so we'll use this soil area to start growing in. At the back there I'm going to put a small shed to store my chicken feed, and I've got those doors that I'm going to use to make the shed, and when I get around to doing that I'll put a video up. But we've got once we do that, there'll be more space in the chicken house, and there'll be some nice usable space out here as well, because there's a good bit of space here actually. So that whole side is new for last year, and it's a part of the garden that we've sort of inherited last year, and it's given us some additional options. This chicken house is another thing that I need to get taken down, and until I get this side cleared I can't get my man cave built up, because there's a solid foundation here. So there's a concrete foundation here that I can raise a man cave up on here, and I've got all that glass that you saw behind my shed that I'm going to make a man cave with a greenhouse attached to it, and if I have a fire in there then I've got a heated greenhouse, so that'll be good. That'll be nice and interesting. This was all grass last year, and I converted this grass, lawn area that wasn't getting used. It was sort of patchy lawn that was just really not very well maintained. But I converted it into a garden space and more growing space, and at the moment I've just got everything sheet mulched and covered in cardboard, and we'll go ahead and we'll transform that into more growing this year. We grew squash here last year. I don't know what we'll grow this year. Might go for something a little bit different, but we'll have a look. We've got plenty of options to think about. It's all sheet mulched. I mean, I turned this into a growing space from pure lawn to something that we can plant into in less than a day. So if you want to have a look at how I did that, I'll leave a link for it up here as well, and you can go and have a look at that. The greenhouse had a nice coat of paint on it, but the roof needs painting. Some of the wood on the roof needs painting, and I need to get up there and figure out how I'm going to do that without falling through. But I'm trying to overwinter my chilies. Sometimes I feel like I'm having a bit of a losing battle, because we're using these fat burning candles to heat the place. They need topping up. So there's a couple of cans that actually need topping up. We'll get those topped up today and refilled and put out again. But as you can see, I always have a good few of them burning in here. So the days are getting a little bit longer now. The daylight's starting to get a little bit longer, and you'll see that sun, especially in an enclosed space like this, have a massive effect. Especially if you can add a little bit of heat, you can get growing in here a lot earlier. And I'm aiming to start transferring things from the house here a lot earlier than I did last year. So my garlic's absolutely going great guns. I mean, it's been a little bit cold, so they look a little bit miserable at the moment, but give them a few days of sun and a little bit of warmth, and they're going to perk up no problem at all. You can see the cardboard method and the mulch method that I used to plant them, and they're really going really well. So we've got garlic all down this side, all down where the beans used to be, and they're all growing down there as well. So there's loads everywhere. If you look all over the garden, you might see garlic just randomly planted all over the place, and I've deliberately done that because that's where I'm going to plant things like broad beans. In some of the patches of garlic in the middle, I've already planted broad beans, and I'll plant broad beans, I'll plant spinach, I'll plant loads of other things, and that's part of my pest control process. I mean, a lot of people struggle with black fly on broad beans. I don't, simply because I use this method of interplanting, and I use the concept of smelly plants to protect my plants. Now, quite a few people say plant garlic on the shortest day, and what I'm doing here is a little bit of an experiment between planting planting garlic on the shortest day. I've got a similar size bed over on that side of the garden that I've gone for my traditional method of planting garlic in October using my cardboard method, and we'll compare the two and see how they get on through the year, how weedy they get, how much harvest we get, how much work they are to maintain each different type of bed. So there's a little bit of an experiment going on for you there. Another thing that I managed to get done recently was convert a path that was just here. I converted this path into a growing space. You might have seen the video recently, but you can go and have a look at how I did that. And I've got two nice growing beds, and this is where I'm going to grow potatoes this year. So this is going to be my potato bed. I'm already filling it with wood chips. Whenever I get a chance, I'm wheeling a barrow of wood chips over and I'm dumping it here. Back here is where I grew potatoes last year, and you can see it lush and green with cover crops on. So what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to cut it down and I'm going to sheet mulch it, and that'll be more luscious, nutritious material for growing squash in this year. Okay. So down here I've got a bit of an experiment going on again, and I've done a video on Patreon explaining the concept behind what I'm doing here and what I'm trying to achieve. This bed's got some mustard on it. Dotted amongst the mustard we've got chard, we've got spinach still growing, and these will feed us up until late spring. And when it starts getting warm, it'll start bolting. And once it starts bolting, then yeah, I mean, once it starts bolting, we'll save a few for seed and the rest can come up. But again, we'll mulch, we'll chop these cover crops back and let them mulch. The fruit trees are getting quite tall now, and traditionally what people would have done was they would have kept them probably about 6 foot high, 10 foot high, no taller than that. But for me, these fruit trees are a wind barrier, as well as giving me fruit. They're a wind barrier because to protect my garden, and that's a really important thing here. Is we get a lot of wind coming up the hill, and it can cause a lot of damage to the garden. So these trees have now they've matured quite a bit, and they're giving me a good bit of protection. I will give them a little bit of a pruning and a little bit of tidying, but I'm really counting on that wind protection from them. We haven't quite decided what we're going to grow here yet. It's had potatoes in it the year before, and then it had squash in last year. So this could be an odds and sods bed this year, because we won't plant real heavy feeders here because it's had 2 years of heavy feeders. And what we'll do now is we'll give the garden a little bit of a rest, and we'll just concentrate on building the fertility back up in it before we go for some heavier feeders again. This area is a project in itself. That corner needs tidying up. There's all kinds of plastic piping, there's wood, there's all sorts under there, and it's become a bit of a dumping ground, and I need to get on it and fix it, because what I want to do is over here somewhere is I want to have a nice composting area. I want a roofed composting area. What I used to have was if you look at my early videos, I used to have my composting bays along that fence line there, and that's where I do my composting, and I used to have loads of rhubarb growing there. So I don't know whether to put my composting bays back there, or whether to shove them far back into that corner and get a little bit more protection from this tree above us, from things like the rain and stuff like that. And then it's out of the way as well, you can't see it from the rest of the garden. But one thing that I do want to do is I want to build the kids a tree house at some point, so they've got somewhere to come and mess about and play and swing and stuff. And if I get that done, then that's going to be a thing. But I need to get a move on with that if I'm going to do it, because they're getting a bit older, and in the next couple of years they'll get out of that sort of stuff. So but it's just time, it's just real time. Yeah, you can see my composting bays are just completely falling apart, so they'd really need some work this year. It is a priority on my list this year. I mean, it's a big job, there's going to be a lot involved, so there's only a certain amount of big jobs that I can handle in a year. But hopefully if I can get the man cave and the composting bays done this year, that'll be a big achievement. Managed to get the bean arch back up yesterday that had fallen down in the wind. We've got garlic growing underneath, and what I'm going to do with these strawberry beds is I'm going to take out the strawberry plants at the very top and just allow it to sprawl down. I mean, all these plants here, they've grown themselves. I haven't done anything to put them in, but the top side, probably from about here onwards, I'm going to take all these plants out because they're quite old now. A lot of these are younger plants, these are a lot older plants, so I'll get rid of all of them, and then we'll have a bit more of a rotation going on. Get rid of the older plants, let the younger plants take over. But we're getting so many strawberries, we get loads of strawberries, and a lot do go into waste because we just can't eat them all and process them all. This plum tree, I haven't decided on what to do with it. We'll think about it this year. Yeah, it's an old plum tree. It's the same age as them, and it's a real poor fruiter, so it needs a bit of a pruning. We'll sort it out this year. We'll sort it out. There's always stuff to sort out, isn't there? And now we're back up to the top side of the garden. I want to get rid of this bench, and I might actually plant a willow arch here, so a living bench. I've got some willow that I can use to do that, so we'll get some willow saplings and we'll grow like a willow arch here and see what we do with that. But that'll be quite nice if we can get that, if we can pull that off. So there's a tour around the garden for you, so you can see the differences and the change that happens through the seasons, and it's a record for me as well, so I can see what I wanted to do and did I manage to achieve my targets. So it's a nice way of keeping track on the way the garden's changed. I mean, I remember we've got videos and pictures from when that greenhouse wasn't even here, so it's good to see how it changes over the years. I've done a full video on why I've dug that trench down there and the explanation of it on Patreon, so if you do want to support our channel, there's a great way of supporting our channel, and there's additional bonus content on there as well. So I'm going to leave it there for this one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.